Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and this is the fourth part in my How I Booktube series. In this series of videos I'll take you through my personal booktubing process step by step to show you how I do things. And I started this series as a reaction to kind of a lack of information about processes and conventions and technicalities. So this is probably most of interest to those of you who are either running a booktube channel or thinking about starting a booktube channel. In the first 3 episodes I spoke about my process for coming up with video ideas, my process for planning and scripting videos, and then finally my recording setup for booktube. And I will link the entire playlist in the description box so you can watch the first 3 parts before you get to this one if you like. So this video is all about editing, about the point of taking a raw video recording and cutting it down and changing it to your preference. Now, a bit of a disclaimer, I originally planned for this video to be one where you can actually watch me edit a video, but I did not figure out how to do the screen recording thing properly. Every time I tried it with different settings on the screen recording software, there would be little glitches, like the sound wouldn't work or the image would do weird things, so I decided not to do that. But also I wanted this video to be applicable for all editing softwares, not just the one I use. I'm going to briefly talk about the editing software I used, and that is a program called DaVinci Resolve. It is completely free, which is why I like it, but it's also very professional. It can do a lot, and it can do a lot more than I can. And here is already my next disclaimer. I have not learned editing anywhere. I have never taken a course in video editing or have any qualifications to my name about video editing. So this is purely from the perspective of someone who has taught herself to do some very basic editing for booktubing purposes. If you want to learn editing techniques specific to the software that you use, or if you want to research different bits of editing software and figure out which one works best for you, then Google is your best friend. If you search for anything that you might want to do in a video, say for example you'd really like to flip the video upside down, then search how to flip a video upside down in enter name of your editing software, because that is just the best way to learn certain techniques, is to Google them and watch a step-by-step video or look at a blog post about them specifically. And this is pretty much how I have taught myself to do the very basic editing that I do on my video. So very basic editing. Why do it, and is it necessary? Now there are lots of booktube channels that don't edit at all, and that is totally fine. There are some amazing booktubers who I subscribe to and whose videos I love, who just do one-take videos, and they work for them, and they are engaging and entertaining and they flow well. But I am not that person. I need to edit my videos into something that makes sense. My raw video files really would not be that interesting to watch. So if you are a natural speaker, if you are a natural storyteller, if you have that way with words, if you can talk to a camera without messing things up, without having half-a-minute long coughing fits, then, you know, power to you. But I'm not that person, and I feel like my videos flow better, look better, sound better when they are edited. At the end of this video, I will actually show you an example. I'll put a short clip from a recent video, maybe even from this video, I haven't picked it yet, at the end, and show you the unedited versus the edited version. So if you want to see the actual effects of editing, in my case, then watch through to the end of this video and you can see the side-by-side comparison. And booktube editing, for the most part, is really quite simple because we booktubers, we're lazy people. We tend to just sit on a comfy old office chair or in an armchair or stand in front of a gorgeous looking bookshelf, and we don't really move much from that position. So all we usually do is sit, stand and hold books into the camera like such. So that doesn't require a huge amount of kind of technical wrangling. It doesn't require a huge amount of coordination. So editing for BookTube is relatively simple if you stick to the conventions. Obviously, if you want to push the boundaries and do some really cool stuff, then go for it. But I am not that talented. The main things that I do to a video in edit are as follows: cutting out pauses, repeats, and other filler words, coughing, sneezing, any other kind of interruptions. So cutting out these kind of unnecessary bits of video is really the main function of editing for me. When I say cutting out arms, I don't mean cutting out all the arms, because that makes the video sound very stilted and unnatural. But sometimes I'll, like this, I'll pause because I have to gather my thoughts, or I mispronounce a word and have to say it again, or I go trying to remember author names, and those bits I usually cut out. Usually, but not always. The next thing that I tend to cut out is when I get completely sidetracked, or I go on about a certain topic for way too long. This mostly happens in my unscripted videos, and then I can just cut out the whole bit and edit the rest together to make sense somehow. And finally, I always have a long pause, a long bit of silence at the beginning of my videos for noise reduction purposes, which I'll get to later as well, and I cut that out as well. Also the last half a second of a video, which is basically just me reaching over to the camera to turn it off. No one needs to see that. As well as cutting things, I also add things in the edits, and here are some things that I commonly usually add in my videos. A picture of a book cover in the corner. Bing! When I don't have a book to hold up into the camera, I will sometimes insert a book title image. And the way that you do that varies depending on your editing software. In my editing software, DaVinci Resolve, you kind of just add the picture as a separate video track, and then you can change the way that the video tracks overlay one another. But I know that in different pieces of editing software that works differently. Again, my advice to you would be just to Google, how do I insert an image into a video in name of editing software. Something else I sometimes add is background music, and I usually only use that during vlogs. So when I have a vlog, I have these montages of, you know, usually me reading or typing or my cats being adorable, and I will add some background music to that. The music I get from the YouTube audio library, because that's the easiest way to not get tangled up in copyright claims. All of the music in the YouTube audio library is free to use. Sometimes you have to add a, what's it called? A credit. I don't tend to use background music during my videos where I just talk to camera. I tried it once. I did it once during a video. I added some very subtle piano music in the background, and then at the end of a video I said, did you notice that there was any music, and do you prefer that to not having any music? And honestly, most people didn't even notice the background music. I think if you have background music that's loud enough that it is noticeable, then it can get in the way. So personally, I don't like to have background music in my talking to camera type videos. I also sometimes add a text overlay. So for example, name of a book, name of an author, name of a booktube channel that I'm recommending, some clarification. I can just add the text on the screen. You know, that helps the understanding of the video. Sometimes I use it for kind of visual gags or, you know, fun little editing things. I always enjoy when people do that in videos that I watch, but I'm also personally not committed enough to put a lot of work into making the editing that distinctive. Very rarely I will add something called B-roll to my videos, and B-roll is just footage other than the main footage. So this here is the main footage. If I was to add a random clip of my cat sleeping in her cat bed, then that would be B-roll. So now we've gone through two things that I do in edit. One is cutting things, the second is adding things, and the third one is going to be effects. The one effect I use in every single one of my videos is a gentle noise reduction. You have to be really careful with noise reduction because overusing noise reduction makes the sound incredibly tinny, and maybe I'm a little bit sensitive to that because I'm in music, I listen to a lot of things, but I find tinny sounding audio almost more annoying than video with background noise. Again, every piece of editing software will be different in terms of noise reduction, but usually you will be required to select a piece of noise so that the software can identify what the backing noise is, what those frequencies are, and then cut them in the noise reduction. So make sure that you have a piece of complete silence somewhere in the video, ideally at the beginning, so you know where it is. And then you can select those. I usually leave about 10 seconds. You can select those 10 seconds of backing noise to teach the software what the noise levels are, and then it can apply that noise reduction to the rest of the video. If you're able to manually set those levels, make sure you set them nice and low, because overusing the noise reduction or not using it correctly causes the actual human voice to sound a bit robotic. The next effects are ones that I do rarely, so there are things that I don't really do in every video. One of them is the leveling of audio tracks. I only do this when I actually have several audio tracks. So when I have a audio track of like me talking, and then also an audio track of backing music, for example, for a vlog, then I will make sure that the music isn't too loud so that when you move from one clip into the next, there isn't a stark difference in noise levels, in sound levels. And you do that with something called sound envelopes. But really, it just means that you can change the level of the noise to either heighten it to add a few decibels or lower it to make it consistent across the length of the video. A next effect that I use occasionally is, and I'm not sure if this is the technical term, blurring or fading between clips. So when I make a cut in a video and I cut a bit out and I smush the other two bits together, then usually I just leave it as a straight cut, so it goes from one clip straight into the next without any fading or whatever. But it is really easy to do like a crossover fade so that the video moves gently from one clip into the next. I will use that effect sometimes during vlogs, but not so much when I'm just sitting here talking to you. And then finally, an effect you can use but I don't is sound effects. Similar to background music, you can find sound effects in the YouTube audio library. There's all sorts of sound effects from, I don't know, dogs barking to explosions and things like that you can play around with. I quite like them as a viewer. I think they add a lot of character to a video if used sparingly, but personally I find them just too much work for me to bother with. I just wanted to mention it as another effect that you can use. So final thoughts on editing. Editing takes time, a really long amount of time. For me, it takes about 3 to 4 times the length of the raw original video file to edit it. So for example, this video that I'm recording right now has been going for 17.5 minutes. So it's probably going to take me at least an hour to edit, but probably a bit longer. Patience and practice is required for good edits. I'm very much still learning. I'm still figuring things out. And BookTube is quite a forgiving genre of YouTube video to do that in, because the editing really isn't a main feature of the kinds of videos that we make. So I think it's a nice, gentle way to learn video editing. And sometimes I'm a bit more experimental, sometimes I enjoy playing around with it a bit more, and sometimes I just stick to the basics, which is cutting out pauses and repeats and things like that. Finally, here is a finished clip. I'm going to find a clip. I don't know which one it's going to be yet, but it'll tell you on the screen. I'm going to show you a finished clip from a video. It might be this very video, and you can watch the edited clip first, and then I'll show you the unedited version of that same clip. Pay attention to the differences, pay attention to the difference in length, and yeah, it's just a live example of what editing does within a booktube context. I hope this was useful, even though I didn't get to show you my screen while I edit like originally planned. But like I said, I'm still very much learning those technicalities of booktube. This was the 4th episode in this How I Booktube series. The next episode is going to be about thumbnails and about uploading settings and things like that. So we're continuing with the straight nerdy technical talk. Thank you for watching. Bye. So I did the obvious thing and looked at 1890 in literature on Wikipedia, and I came across a book titled Gloriana or the Revolution of 1900, and this is by Lady Florence Caroline Dixie. So the title was very intriguing, obviously, because it's called The Revolution of 1900, but it was published in 1890. So I did the obvious thing and looked at 1890 in literature on Wikipedia, and I came across a book titled Gloriana or the Revolution of 1900, and this is by Lady Florence Caroline Dixie. So the title was very intriguing, obviously, because it's called The Revolution of 1900, but it was published in 1890.